Good evening and welcome to our annual virtual Diverse Ed Authors event for World Book Day. As a former English teacher, this is one of my favourite days of the year, this coupled with International Women's Day. And we're going to start off tonight's event with my feisty female panel of 5 brilliant women who have published books recently. We've got 4 panels for you tonight. You're going to hear from all of the authors. What would be fantastic is in the chat, please tell us that you're here, tell us who you are, where you are, and please put comments and questions as you listen to the narratives from our authors about how they got to write a book, how they got it published, what feedback they're getting. That is the point of tonight. So we're going to dive straight in to say hello to Charlotte and Tracey, our first authors who are going to share their story tonight. Over to you, ladies.
Hello, thanks for having us.
Hi everyone. Thank you for joining. Happy World Book Day.
So we're talking about Wellbeing Wins for Teachers on brand. Now, we should preface this with the fact that Hannah was kind enough to write our foreword because I'm a big fan of reach out to your heroes and they might just respond. So this book is about ostensibly about well-being, but we use people mostly, there's one exception, with people with protected characteristics as models for winning at well-being. And we break well-being down, which is a very big, controversial, seemingly insurmountable issue in teaching. We break it down into small wins. So each person with a protected characteristic has 3 wins that we think we can take. But there is one exception to the protected characteristics because Robbie Williams is in there because we've both taught in Stoke, but we're not saying that being from Stoke is a protected or should be protected characteristic, but it is very high in the poverty indices.
It's worth a mention, yeah.
So we collaborated together. We've formerly been colleagues. I'd previously co-written Teach Like a Queen, which was about female leadership. And this was originally supposed to be about women, but it turns out there are more readers out there than women. And there's more than one lens to look through with EDI.
Absolutely. Just building on that then. So Tracey and I are passionate leaders. As she previously mentioned, we were colleagues. We taught together for a number of years. Essentially, we're both really passionate as well at supporting young teachers new in the profession, although this is marketed at a range of sort of experience, if you like. We've both got quite extensive experience mentoring and supporting new teachers. We feel it's the best profession in the world, but we know we are in a crisis. So the kind of intent behind this and purpose behind the book was to really support and sell what we feel is an amazing profession to be in. But we are in a recruitment and retention crisis. We know that, and we felt like something radical needs to be done. We believe that this book is a small cog in an influential wheel. So that's our purpose.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about well-being, people think that well-being is like coffee and cake and caffeine, and we wanted to look at well-being as and not that we would ever say no to any of the above, but actually there is a need on a profession-wide level to break well-being down into small habits. And we talk a lot about habits in the book. We look at people like Taylor Swift, who are at the top of their game. There's a whole chapter on Beyonce, Tina Turner, people who have achieved longevity in very, very, absolutely not teaching, but very competitive, very demanding careers. So it's a bit nuts, really, to read a book about teaching and talk about Tina Turner, but it sort of works. We think we pulled it off.
It's what are transferable skills and what can we really, utilize and most importantly embed. This isn't just something, temporary. This is to support people in their career path.
Yeah, and as far as I know, I've coined the phrase well-being wins, and we actually use this across my school and trust now. When we make a decision at SLT, it's like, where's the well-being win? What can we sell to staff as demonstrable proof that we've taken their well-being into account? So this is not a book about EDI, but it's a celebration of EDI through well-being, really. And what could be better for your well-being than being authentically yourself and accepted and celebrated? And each book's got a case study in as well. So we don't just stick with Taylor Swift and Tom Daley. We actually do then contextualize it further with how a real life teacher has lived that wellbeing win. Is there anything to add, do you think, Charlotte?
Slightly more relatable. Sorry, Tracey.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't said that we've undersold, do you think?
I don't think so. I think building on your point before about it being more than just coffee and cake, I think it's things like time, and it's, you know, remembering the why and why we're here, why we do what we do. Those things add up to building a kind of a healthy work-life balance, prioritizing. That's a big one, you know, the Dolly Parton chapter on working 9 to 5 and the rest. It's what can we take away from these icons? What can we take away from people who've lived and breathed it, and what's transferable? And most of all, we had real fun writing it, and it helped me to reflect. And I know, Tracey, you'd say the same about our own habits. We're both experienced teachers, and both English teachers and leaders. And I think what's great is what we've been able to take away ourselves, following our own advice, hopefully, not always the case, and disseminating that to others. And like Tracey said, coining those phrases. This is not just a one-off kind of fleeting, let's look at well-being. This is something that we really want to cement.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and for writing. I feel like we need a playlist to go with it. I think you should have all the songs by all your heroes and sheroes. That just
crossed my mind. Yeah, that's crossed my mind before.
Robbie pops up later. That's
there you go. Well, we will have a night out together. That's what we're going to do. Well, thank you, ladies. I'm going to go to the other authors, and I'm going to come back to you. I have got questions, and I'll come back to you in a moment. So, good evening, Evelyn Forde. It's lovely for you to join us from your hotel room in Brighton to tell us all about your book, Herstory. Do you want to come on and
I will. Thank you for having me. I hope you can hear me. This is my book. It is called Herstory. It's a leadership manifesto. And I'll just kind of chart very quickly the journey in terms of how I got to writing the book. I'm a history teacher by trade, and when I started teaching many years ago, I also got my email address, and my email address has Herstory in the line, and I really wanted to flip the narrative on his story and make it her story. So this book has been in me and kind of with me forever, really. And that's what I would say to people as well. I think we've all got a book in us. It's just how that manifests itself. My book is a very personal story in terms of it charts my experience as a Black female leader in the sector. Many of you on the call will know that in terms of diversity and representation, there's only 1% of head teachers who are Black, and there is a pipeline block in terms of leaders coming through, and there are many reasons that sit behind that, and I kind of talk that story and share the narrative. I talk about my own experiences in terms of racism, discrimination, how hard it was for me to get that deputy headship and then that headship. But I really wanted it just not to be my voice and my story. And so there are 5 or 6 case studies, testimonials of other Black leaders who've had some, quite moving and quite humbling experiences. So my story is then layered with their narrative as well. Excuse me. So I set the scene with these are our experiences in the sector. And I share that because for aspiring leaders coming through the system, I don't want to put them off, but it really is, we're kind of treading that path for you and clearing the way. And I wanted aspiring leaders to know that we have kind of gone before and we are there to support them. So there's a section in there for aspiring leaders, and just some kind of top tips that I kind of share with them. I also wanted to weave in the voices of young people. So there's a whole chapter on the student voice and how they feel about having diverse representation in the senior level. So it was kind of leaders talking and then young people talking. And then there's like the top tips that I'm giving to aspiring leaders. But I also talk to trade unions, professional associations. I think there's some work that they can do in terms of looking at the data of people who are leaving their posts and why they're leaving their posts. I talk to policymakers because I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of kind of groundwork, and I call it grassroots kind of work. But actually, until it comes from policy and there is a deep understanding about systemic racism in the sector, we're never going to shift it. So I then end with hope, because I do want people to read it and think, gosh, that was really hard. But what Evelyn's doing in her book is she's offering practical suggestions and ideas for us to have a sector that is much more representative of the communities that we serve than it currently is. In terms of how I got an author, I'm really big on connections and networks. And so I kind of reached out to a few people that I was aware of in the sector. I had meetings with 2 publishers, and then the one that I landed with, there was a real nice synergy between us. So Andy Buck through Cadogan Press, he became my author. He's a very small outfit. He's not a massive one. And he kind of really worked with me in pulling the book together. In terms of the feedback, I think the feedback has been amazing. I can't tell you the number of people who've messaged me privately with real moving kind of stories that they have never shared before. And for me, that really kind of reaffirms that we need to change the system. So her story, my story, I want it to become everybody's story, and it is a real call for action, because we do need to change what the system looks like. Lots of talk around belonging, and I just feel that we won't feel like we belong until we have a system that recognizes the systemic racism that is at play in the sector. So a big shout out to my book. It is available on Amazon. You know, I'd love you to buy it, but I'd really love you to read it. And I would really love to have your reflections on kind of what you read and what you're going to do, your call for action, because I think as a collective, we can all do it together. So that's my book, Herstory, a Leadership Manifesto.
Brilliant. Thank you, Evelyn. I think that's a really good call to action. We're all a bit guilty of ordering the books, buying the books, but not reading the books. And then propping up our bedside table. We get a bit dusty sometimes. So actually reading it and sharing and cascading and passing it on to someone else, I think that's a really good call to action. I've got some questions for you as well. We're going to hand over to our next duo, the lovely Caren and Kemi, who I think are both in London at the moment, but Kemi's normally in Dubai. Black in School book. Tell us all about your writing journey, you two. Here it is.
Everyone. Hi, everyone. Kemi, do you want to go first?
Sure. So this is mine and Karen's book, Black in School, the Black Teacher's Guide for Surviving the Classroom. And this is something that Karen and I was on a leadership training course back in 2019. And then we both spoke about, we had this idea to write a book. And our ideas were very similar. So rather than writing 2 separate books, what Evelyn was saying about the power of networking, why don't we come together, bring our ideas together and write this amazing book that we know will not just help Black teachers, but also people of different backgrounds in the education sector. Karen and I actually are on the same team in terms of the Black Teachers Network. That's how we initially met and connected. Karen, I'm going to say 2019, right?
I want to say it was earlier than that, but we'll go with 2019 because I met you at the traded thing. Then I went to one of your events. It was the other way around, but it was just synergy. Like, we just kept seeing each other and meeting each other and connecting. And, you know, Kemi's done a lot of work with connecting Black teachers through YBTN, which is now BTN. And we were both just so passionate about the support network that Black teachers, but all teachers need. But we just felt like there was a lot of Black teachers leaving the profession. We knew so many personally that we'd started with and had obviously fallen off, left in when they were progressing through leadership. And obviously we'd also had our own challenges. And we just thought we need to write and share uplifting stories. And also the reality is, like, you are going to face the, you know, playground bullies who are now grown up wearing suits and whatnot. They're going to be your line manager. They're going to be your colleague. They're going to be, you know, you need to be ready, but you also need to be a little bit more savvy about how you navigate the system. But also, one of the biggest things we talk about is, if you want to leave the job, if you want to switch careers, if you want to move to a different country, if you need to prioritize yourself, that is a very important part of actually progressing as a leader. And that just connects a lot to what they were saying about well-being with, you know, it's not a gimmick. It's so important if you want to have a long career that you do pivot when you need to. And I do want to say thank you to Evelyn as well, because she's one of the contributors to the book.
Yeah. And just to add to what Caren was saying, is we cover a lot in this book. We even our own childhood experiences in education, up until, you know, how we progressed into being senior leaders within our own schools as well. And we cover things like the arts, because coming from specifically from an African background, you know, doing creative subjects may not necessarily be seen as the way to make money, but how important the arts is. Black men in education, Black women in education. And what Caren was saying, you know, we have people who have worked in America, Netherlands, Spain, the Middle East, who have all contributed to this book to share their experiences as well. And I really just want to emphasize, this is not just for Black teachers. This is for every single person in education who really wants to ensure that their schools, their organizations are representative of the society we live in, of the schools they work in, and also the way we want society to progress in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This book is definitely for you. At the end of every chapter, we have a big question, because we want everyone who reads this to really reflect and think about, what are your school's policies? What do you have in place that could be different, that could be better, to ensure that your staff team, your students, everybody really does feel like they are not just seen, but they're also heard. And I also want to give a big shout out to Belle Ribeiro Addy, one of the Labour MPs, who wrote the foreword to this book as well.
And just to round us off, something that Kemi hasn't mentioned, which was really pivotal to this, is that we had Adele Bates, who I think Kemi met on a podcast, who put us in touch with our publishers. And our publishers at Sage were amazing. They took us through the process. Even now, they're supporting us in all our promotion. And it will come through all the communication channels like LinkedIn and so on. But we've got lots of events planned for this year and some already booked. So you can meet some of the authors and get to know more about the book and about us as the year progresses.
You can find the book on Amazon, Waterstones, WH Smith, Sage UK, Sage US. Buy the book, buy the book, buy the book. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. And we're going to send out, my EA has spent hours putting all your books onto the bookshop, and the bookshop promotes independent booksellers, because I'm quite guilty of just going to Amazon because it's quick and it comes tomorrow, but also supporting our local bookshops. It's really important. So thank you, all of you. I'm going to see if any questions come through the chat. Otherwise, I have got questions for all of you. My first question is going to be to our two duos. Because writing a book by yourself, and I'll come back to Evelyn, is hard enough by yourself. But when you're working with someone, when you're partnering, so Tracey and Charlotte, you used to work together, but how did you create a synergy, a rhythm about how you juggle life, families, husbands or head teachers, and writing a book? Just tell us about the journey, please, as a partnership.
I think we're both very driven. Oh, sorry, Tracey. See that?
What a great example of partnership. Just talk over each other.
We're speaking for each other. There you go. That proves we've worked together too long. I think we're both really passionate, and we're both really passionate about the idea behind this, but we're both really passionate writers. And Tracey, Tracey really inspired me, because we had a shared dream of writing a book. I've written a children's book, but that was more, my sister and I, a little bit of fun, a lockdown project. Tracey actually had a real book published. So I looked up to her in great you know, great detail, really, because we both had that shared dream and vision. So Tracey approached me and asked if I'd be interested, and it was just a straight away yes. The way that we did it from a practical point of view was to split up the icons, if you like, picked who wants to do what chapters. We were both, you know, in contact with each other frequently, and did it that way, and would send each other work and proofread, etc. But Tracey, having gone through that journey before, was a massive help. And it's just a partnership that works. You've got to work with the right person. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to have that passion. You've got to want to do it. And it was a priority for both of us, really, to get this done and achieve for all the reasons mentioned earlier. But you have to have a sense of humour as well, and we both definitely have that. And that gets us through many things.
I mean, we're both still full-time in the classroom. I mean, Charlotte's a head teacher now. You have to really want to do it. You have to really feel like you've got something that you want to share. And I think for me, writing's, it's joy. So it's really easy to find time for something that is joy, that like nourishes you, that feeds you, that fires something up in you. So for me, it's been about that. And I previously wrote Teach Like a Queen, which was about female leadership and amplifying marginalized female voices. So it's largely the same format, but I had co-written that with my brother, which was a totally different experience, because he and I write as though we're one person, but Charlotte and I had distinct chapters that felt quite easy to manage, because that was my bit and that was Charlotte's bit, and we own the chapters. And it's a slightly different process to how I'd worked previously.
Love that. I love the fact that Charlotte practiced on her sister, Tracey practiced on her brother. Then you came together, worked together as two professionals. So let me ping it over to Kemi and Caren, because you met through synergy, but you had different time zones going on. Kemi was growing a baby while she was doing a book. Like, how did the two of you manage this around the day jobs and around life happening? Kemi?
Well, we started this book in around 2020, 2021, actually. So it's been, you know, it's been our baby. It's been in the pipeline for a while. And I think similar to what, actually, sorry, Caren and I have very different styles of writing. We're two very different people who have different experiences within education, some similar experiences as well. But what's great about that is because we brought those two different voices and styles of writing to the book as well. I think another thing that, although we were in different time zones, we had to have regular meetings, and we had to make sure that we were both on the same page of what it was I wanted to do, and that our purpose for this book, and knowing it was bigger than us, it was something that's going to influence and, you know, have an impact on the education sector. Caren, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, and so both of us had a baby during this process. So I had my baby in 2022, and I was on maternity leave, and then I was writing bits then, but the real big writing happened just as I came off maternity leave. So that was just wild experience. And for Kemi, she was moving countries, getting married. Then she obviously had her baby now. So there's been a lot of life changes that have happened to both of us whilst writing and promoting and creating this other baby, the book. So I think one of the biggest things was just like patience and understanding with the journey that we're both in on our personal lives, because life does happen. But yeah, one of the biggest things that kept us to task was Sage had James and Asoso and a couple of other people working with us who would bring us together at regular intervals and have really in-depth check-ins. But we also had lots of contributors who, thankfully, Kemi managed them really, really well. And they brought a lot to the book as well.
Fabulous, thank you. And Evelyn, I'm going to practice saying your name right. I'm so sorry. It's interesting writing a book by yourself, isn't it? A lot of people almost worry about putting your name there, your voice out there, your story out there. How do you navigate that inner critic and that imposter syndrome about your voice and your writing?
Yeah, I think because it had always been in me, you know, when you have a book swirling around everywhere, I just thought it's too important not to be heard. And I think that's what made me overcome the, oh my God. And I remember somebody saying to me, because the book is quite uncomfortable in some parts. It really kind of calls out the sector in a way that is quite uncomfortable. And I remember somebody saying to me, what happens if you get cancelled? What happens if what you're saying, people are so like going to distance themselves for you? And I said, well, that will say a lot, won't it? But that was like, no, actually, and that kind of reaffirmed why the book was important to write. It's not easy writing a book by yourself, but I used to take myself off to a cafe, you know, and if you get writer's block, I think that's okay. You just think I'm going to park it for a little bit and then come back. But I think, you know, I think everybody on the screen, our books are so important in different kind of ways that not to write it and not to have it published, I think we would have done ourselves a disservice. So just kind of any budding authors out there, pen to paper, there's no rush. It will come when it's meant to come.
And that's a really interesting thought there about the being cancelled, because I think a lot of people do worry about that. I think having watched your journey over the last few years around headship and then ASCL, I feel like you've kind of taken people with you on a bit of a journey and almost like done the groundwork. So they're almost perhaps more open to hearing the challenge and having the confrontation. Does that resonate?
Yeah, that makes sense, Hannah. But I do think there are some pockets in the sector that actually just don't want to hear it, right? And I'm sure, you know, when all of us start talking, whether that's on well-being or diverse representation, you can see people thinking, oh, here they go again. Here she goes again. But that just spurs me on even more because I think that we kind of got a groundswell of people that, you know, care about well-being. I think there's a groundswell of people that do care about the lack of diverse representation. So like you say, there's enough people who've got our back that are going to come with us. And those that don't, I call them the naysayers. And that's why we will continue to do what we do, because it's important for our children and for our teachers and teachers and staff in our schools.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you're right. It's about how this collective stands together. This is our 5th year of doing this event. So like we've now amplified, probably almost 100 people who we didn't have this diversity of voice and publishing 5 years ago within the sector. And I do think it's inspirational. You've all had the confidence to do it and put yourself out there, because you're also giving permission and encouragement to other people to do it as well. If I could ask you all just to all wrap up with one quick tip, anyone listening, about how they get their story from being in their head, in their heart, onto paper. Tracey, what's your one quick tip for them?
Fake it. I told Women Ed that I was in talks with the publisher. I was not in talks with the publisher, but I had emailed one. Just blag it, tell lies, the truth will catch up.
Charlotte, build on that, please.
I don't know how I follow that, Tracey. Talk to people, network and stick together, you know, network with people who will mention your name in a room full of opportunities. And Tracey and I are proudly those kind of people.
Love that. Caren, how about you? What's your one quick tip?
I would say to nurture your story and to feed it, and to know, just like Evelyn said, that story that you have inside you is really important. Like, I started doing a doctorate so that I could like build on the research behind it before I even got to talk to Kemi about it. So actually nurture your story, build it from the inside out, so that when it does now paper, it just flows.
Love that. Kemi, do you want to build on that?
Just do it. Just do it. Sorry, I'm saying that because a lot of us have a lot of fear, or we feel like we can't do something and we tend to hold ourselves back. Enough of that. In 2025, just do it.
Yeah, love that. And Evelyn, final word from you, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything. And I'd also say, accept that you might have blocks, accept that you might do a whole hundreds of words and actually you reread it and you're not happy with it. And I think just accept that is okay. Lean into it. That's totally fine. And then when the words are ready, they'll just kind of fly and you'll be kind of typing away like nobody's business. So accept that and just kind of lean into it.
Love that. Final shot then. Can you all hold your books up for me, please? Panel 1, thank you very much for all birthing these books and putting them out there and for sharing your story. You can now go and enjoy your evenings wherever in the world you are. I'll be back in 60 seconds with panel 2, but thank you very much and I'll see you soon.